With the WINN FM News, I am Kevin Brown. Our top stories. Voices of Sustainability features Dr. Joelle Clark, highlights SID's leadership in climate resilience. Police confirm fatal stabbing of young woman in New Road. Attorney General Garth Wilkin talks pathways to citizenship in St. Kitts and Nevis. Private sector representative in Grenada warns of economic repercussions as global responses continue following Trump tariffs. St. Lucia faces 10% U.S. tariff amid global trade shift. Internationally, future of European defense, Lithuania gears up for frontline fight. Now, the details. In the latest episode of Voices of Sustainability, the Honorable Senator Dr. Joelle Clark, Minister of Sustainable Development, Environment, Climate Action and Constituency Empowerment for St. Kitts and Nevis, articulated how small island developing states, SIDS, are at the forefront of global efforts to combat climate change and foster sustainable development. The discussion underscored SID's vital role in pioneering climate resilience strategies and the necessity of international cooperation to support these efforts. Dr. Clark began by emphasizing the unique vulnerabilities of Caribbean states.
For small island developing states like St. Kitts and Nevis, or rather for Caribbean states, our climate challenges are mostly environmental and economic and non-economic. And it's all because of our geography.
She outlined the environmental challenges, including prolonged drought, water scarcity, saltwater intrusion, and coastal erosion compounded by the annual threat of hurricanes. She noted that these environmental issues directly translate into economic challenges, particularly for small, exposed economies reliant on tourism and vulnerable to external shocks. The minister also touched upon the increasing energy costs tied to fossil fuels, further exacerbating the economic strain. However, Dr. Clark stressed that size can be turned into an advantage.
For a small island and practically the smallest independent nation in the Western Hemisphere, size can be a hindrance or an opportunity. For us, we're using it as an opportunity to collaborate, in particular with our regional partners and our international allies.
She detailed St. Kitts and Nevis's approach of leveraging its Sustainable Island State agenda to align with and accelerate the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs. The Sustainable Island State agenda is built upon 7 transformational pillars: energy transition, water security, food security, sustainable industries, sustainable settlements, the circular economy, and health and social protection, all intrinsically linked to the SDGs and the National Development Planning Framework. Minister Clark emphasized the importance of regional and international collaboration.
We're working very closely with the University of the West Indies to ensure that all our actions are based on data and science, that we can map where we need to go, and we can present to the world very feasible options for investing in sustainability in St. Kitts and Nevis.
She highlighted partnerships with regional bodies like the Caribbean Climate Change Center 5Cs and the Caribbean Center for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency (CCRE), noting that these collaborations ensure projects are feasible, sound, and definitely smart. The minister elaborated on how St. Kitts and Nevis has utilized climate finance, including $8 million in readiness support from the Green Climate Fund, to mainstream climate resilience across various ministries.
Sustainability becomes that golden thread woven through our projects, our policies, and how we attempt to achieve our overall goal of climate resilience.
She noted that the 7 pillars of the Sustainable Island State Agenda guide budgetary planning, policy development, and project implementation across all sectors. Dr. Clark showcased several flagship projects exemplifying St. Kitts and Nevis's commitment to sustainability. She cited the protection of all land above the 1,000 feet contour line, ensuring biodiversity targets are met, and the Royal Bastia Valley National Park, safeguarding the national aquifer. A notable project is the Eco Park, a partnership with the Republic of China, Taiwan, which integrates agriculture, tourism, and green energy to promote sustainable practices. She also highlighted a recycling project in partnership with the Republic of China, Taiwan.
Here we have a project that started with the Solid Waste Management Corporation and the Department of Environment, with support from Taiwan ICDF, which has blossomed into a project done with the Ministry of Education.
The initiative, involving students in collecting and recycling plastic bottles, has been a precursor to the ban on single-use plastics, demonstrating how sustainability can be integrated into every sector through education and community involvement. Dr. Clark underscored the critical role of international partnerships in advancing sustainability goals, particularly with Canada and Taiwan. She mentioned Canada's support in assessing the impact of the single-use plastic ban and Taiwan's contributions to agro-processing and waste management. As a small island developing state, St. Kitts and Nevis actively participates in international alliances, such as the Ministerial Alliance for Ambition on Nature Finance, the World Coalition for Peace, and the Nature Champions Network. These affiliations provide opportunities to advocate for climate finance, biodiversity, and nature conservation on a global scale, addressing these systemic challenges in accessing climate finance.
If there is a global acknowledgement that SIDS require special assistance, and that because of our negligible contributions to the climate crisis and our extreme exposure and the impacts we face, that we have special circumstances, if we start there by accepting that fact, then I believe that that would lead to a shift in how we mobilize resources to small island developing states.
She lamented that despite the availability of climate finance, it often fails to reach the countries most in need. Dr. Clark advocated for a shift away from using GDP as the sole determinant for overseas development aid, arguing that it disadvantages high-income SIDS like St. Kitts and Nevis. She expressed support for the Multidimensional Vulnerability Index, MVI, and the Bridgetown Initiative, which accounted for factors beyond GDP to assess vulnerability and provide debt relief during climate crises.
There's a recognition also that vulnerability is not going to change. That circumstance won't change for small island developing states unless there is a shift in the international financial architecture, which provides more funding for us for adaptation.
Minister Clark passionately advocated empowering women in climate action, aligning with the International Women's Day theme.
I don't think it's a lack of ambition when it comes to women and leadership. And so I really embrace the theme for this year's International Women's Day, which is Accelerate Action, because it's time that our ambition now transitions to action.
She outlined 3 elements for achieving this: resources, allies, and purposeful leadership. Clark emphasized that women, being closest to the climate challenges, must be at the forefront of developing and implementing solutions and need the resources, platforms, and support to lead effectively. Dr. Clark concluded by reflecting on her experience as a keynote speaker at the Zayed Sustainability Prize Forum.
Personally, it was an honor, a privilege. For St. Kitts and Nevis, it represented so much more. The opportunity, the access, the connection.
She expressed gratitude for the opportunity to share the nation's experiences and challenges on an international stage, affirming St. Kitts and Nevis's commitment to global partnerships and sustainable development.
We will always be a global partner, and we will always support the Zayed Sustainability Prize.
The Honorable Senator Dr. Joyle Clark, Minister of Sustainability, Development, Environment, Climate Action and Constituency Empowerment in St. Kitts and Nevis. The Royal St. Christopher and Nevis Police Force has confirmed that there was a fatal stabbing incident in New Road that claimed the life of a young woman on April 5, 2025. The authorities could not provide the young woman's identity at the time of reporting. There is no clear indication of the reasoning behind the death of the young woman, and police have not shared whether there is someone in custody for the crime. Police have indicated that a male is assisting in the police investigation. More on this as information becomes available. The government of St. Kitts and Nevis is deeply concerned with citizenship, which speaks to the identity of its people and who can become a citizen, as highlighted in Focus on April 2, 2025. Host Ian Richards welcomed Attorney General and Minister of Justice and Legal Affairs, the Honorable Garth Wilkin, to explore this critical topic. Richards opened the discussion by asking what it means to be a St. Kitts and Nevis citizen and how to achieve this. What are the rights, responsibilities, and privileges that come with this status? The Honorable Garth Wilkin explained that while the Constitution defines a citizen as a citizen of St. Kitts and Nevis, it doesn't explicitly define what constitutes a citizen.
So what a citizen is a legal member of a sovereign state. So somebody recognized by law as belonging to the state.
This legal membership, however, is only one aspect of belonging. For Attorney General Wilkin, nationality is an even higher level than citizenship. In his view, nationality encompasses the cultural, historical, and genetic links to a nation.
So you can be a national of a country, meaning you are from that country, but not necessarily be a citizen. So, for example, I have genetic, cultural, professional, personal ties to St. Kitts and Nevis. All of my family is from St. Kitts and Nevis. I'm a national of St. Kitts and Nevis. You can't give that up.
He emphasized his deep-rooted connection.
You grew up in a house eating goat water and black pudding. You know what I mean? And that is what your connection to the country is.
This distinction highlights the many nationals in the diaspora who, though not legal citizens, proudly represent St. Kitts and Nevis. Citizenship, a legal status, can be renounced, whereas nationality is an intrinsic, irremovable part of one's identity. The Honorable Wilkin drove this point home by stating,
unfettered right to own land in St. Kitts and Nevis as a citizen, to live and work in St. Kitts and Nevis, to free tuition to public schools because of the Education Act.
Despite the significance of nationality, citizenship confers specific rights and responsibilities. A.G. Wilkin noted that these include,
people think that you have a constitutional right to a passport. No. The passport actually is owned by the state. It's the property of the government.
He clarified a misconception.
So naturally, if you're born in St. Kitts and Nevis prior to independence or after the independence, you qualify.
However, the right to enter St. Kitts and Nevis remains protected without a passport. The discussion then turned to various pathways to citizenship, which A.G. Wilkin explained are defined in both the Constitution and the Citizenship Act.
There is a bit of a confusion that exists with grandparents bringing their grandchildren. So grandparents born in St. Kitts Nevis, whose child was born outside after independence, bringing their grandchildren who are 18, 19, 20. They don't qualify because first of all, they're getting it through their parent who's entitled because they're a child born outside to a Kittitian division.
Right.
But that person, the parent in between, can only apply for their under 18 child.
Another key pathway is citizenship by descent, attainable through parentage and grandparentage. While pre-independence grandchildren of Kittitians and divisions were eligible, the rules shifted post-independence. After independence, you get it through your parents, clarifying what he called,
here you can get citizenship through marriage. You can also be naturalized, which is that you've been here for 14 years.
The AG emphasized that for those born after independence, citizenship through descent is typically limited to those under 18. Beyond birth and descent, the Constitution and Citizenship Act outline alternative pathways,
which allow persons who substantially invested in the country to be able to be registered as a citizen.
Whether a Commonwealth national under the Constitution or a non-Commonwealth national under the Citizenship Act, residing in St. Kitts and Nevis for 14 years makes one eligible to apply for citizenship. The final pathway is citizenship by investment, established in 1984.
Always subject to the interests of defense, public safety, or public order.
A.G. Wilkin elucidated the eligibility requirements under the various categories, distinguishing automatic qualification and registration. While birthright generally confers automatic citizenship subject to a verification process, registration is,
the minister can reject an application for citizenship by registration. So that's citizenship by marriage, Commonwealth nationals living for 14 years in St. Kitts and Nevis, former citizens who've renounced and now reapplied, children under 18 of registered citizens, and then the other persons that Parliament declare citizens, so citizens by investment.
Including citizenship by marriage for Commonwealth and non-Commonwealth nationals and through investment. This discretionary power underscores the government's commitment to national security and public interest. Interestingly, the Attorney General noted that individuals who renounce their citizenship can reapply. When asked why, he responded,
yeah, you might change your mind. You might say, okay, I'm reapplying.
He noted that while it is possible those who reapply can be rejected, he has never seen this case in his role as the Attorney General. The program host discussed the process of citizenship, referencing practices in other countries such as the United States. AG Wilkin explained that naturalized citizens in St. Kitts and Nevis must swear an oath of allegiance and pointed out that those who are naturalized swear an oath to King Charles III. He explained that St. Kitts and Nevis must become a republic to become fully independent. Adding to the conversation, AG Wilkin supported introducing citizenship testing, especially for those who do not speak English well. Delving into the practical aspects of applying for citizenship, AG Wilkin described the varying processes for each pathway. Birthright applications involve a
process of verification of the documents before the person is granted citizenship.
At the same time, marriage verification officers now scrutinize marriage applications to prevent fraudulent claims. He explained that this is not uncommon for a simple process.
If the marriage verification officer goes to the house of the person and sees that they have been living together as man and wife, they have 4 children, dogs, cats, a family home, and they've been together for 16 years, there's not much verification you need to do, right? Because it's well established that they have been living together, just maybe the wife or husband didn't have any need to apply for citizenship before.
Citizenship by investment similarly necessitates a rigorous due diligence.
So it's not just relying on a police record. Find out details about this person and interview them, and then determine if this person is not a threat to national security, the public interest, is not a money launderer, not a criminal, they're upstanding, upright citizen, and then they could go through.
The discussion with the Attorney General Wilkin provided a comprehensive overview of the pathways to citizenship in St. Kitts and Nevis, highlighting the legal framework, citizens' rights and responsibilities, and the government's commitment to safeguarding national identity and security. In regional news, private sector representative in Grenada warns of economic repercussions as global responses continue following Trump tariffs. Grenada Broadcasting Network reports.
We are in uncharted waters. We are waiting to see how the other countries will react. The words of private sector representative in the Senate, Salim Rahman, as he weighed in on the tariffs announced by United States President Donald Trump on Wednesday. Senator Rahman broke down the repercussions Grenada's economy may face given the heavy reliance on imports.
One of the difficulties is that when you impose a tariff, you then can start a tariff war, trade war, which means that another country can impose a similar tariff on your goods. And we've seen that with Canada. And so it means that we are in uncharted waters because we have not seen globally tariffs levied at countries globally like this before.
The U.S. president's actions, he said, if met with negative responses from other global traders, will result in a trade war, which will significantly affect the countries not directly involved.
We have seen, for example, recently, we have seen countries that were not very close historically, China, Japan, South Korea, they compete with one another in many cases. They have said that they are going to work together to respond to the tariffs. And so if we have a tit-for-tat situation, unfortunately, we are bystanders, and much of the world's population are bystanders. And these tariffs, when they raise costs of goods go up, it's the public that has to bear the brunt of and the effect of it.
The senator echoed the sentiment of Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell, who said a few days ago that Grenada needs to move to become more self-sufficient.
We don't know yet how the countries will react and how that will have an impact on real inflation. What we do know is that things that we import, because we import a lot in Grenada, we have to now look inside, especially as it relates to food production, and we have to ramp up our food production.
The CARICOM private sector organization CPSO technical team has convened to discuss the recently announced tariffs by President Trump, which include a 10% baseline tariff on imports from Grenada and other CARICOM member states into the U.S., set to take effect on Saturday. In a statement on April 3rd, CPSO CEO and Technical Director Dr. Patrick Antwine acknowledged the potential impact these tariffs will have on CARICOM economies. However, he emphasized that a thorough and credible analysis is necessary before issuing a comprehensive response. Dr. Ntwai noted that the tariffs would have both direct and indirect effects on CARICOM economies, initially affecting exports but quickly extending to imports as well. The CPSO reaffirmed its commitment to working collaboratively with the CARICOM Secretariat, regional and international institutions to address the challenges posed by this shift in global economic and trade dynamics. Reporting for GBN News, Beverly Telesford.
St. Lucia faces 10% U.S. tariff amid global trade shift. DBS St. Lucia has the details.
St. Lucia, along with several other Caribbean countries, will be subject to a 10% baseline tariff on goods imported into the United States. This announcement was made by President Donald Trump during his Liberation Day speech on Wednesday, April 2nd. The sweeping trade action represents a major policy shift that could affect economies across the Caribbean. At Monday's pre-cabinet briefing, Commerce Minister Emma Hippolyte was questioned about Trump's impending Liberation Day announcement. She disclosed that this would have been an agenda item of Monday's cabinet meeting.
As I've said before, this situation is very fluid. One of the things we agreed on as the technical subcommittee is how do we prepare our public for what is happening there and possible implications for all of us. So, God willing, Cabinet is going to make some endorsements today, and then we'll be coming out the public announcements. The pace at which we do that is critical for us because it cannot be business as usual.
What are some of the recommendations coming out of the committee?
I cannot discuss it because it's before the Cabinet. It's only after the Cabinet has accepted that we can discuss.
At the inaugural meeting of the Tariffs Task Force last month, the Commerce Minister underscored the significant implications for St. Lucia from the shift in U.S. trade policy under the Trump administration. She asserted that the livelihoods of local business owners, manufacturers, farmers, and exporters were at risk. The Commerce Minister, however, expressed confidence that St. Lucia would overcome these challenges.
We've had challenges before, but this one, as we say, is a seismic shift for us. But you know one thing? The good Lord is still on the throne. There's nobody can shift him. So we sit here and we put our trust in him. And the same way that we have approached every challenge, by putting him first and asking him to guide us, we believe that this too shall pass.
In a statement shared on his social media accounts on Thursday afternoon, Prime Minister Philippe J. Pierre announced that the government of St. Lucia is awaiting official correspondence and full details from Washington. He assured citizens that the government has been proactive by appointing a ministerial task force to examine the implications of these measures. The task force met on Thursday morning to discuss and develop St. Lucia's response to the new tariff, and an official statement will be released once more information becomes available. Meanwhile, the 10% baseline tariff goes into effect on Saturday, April 5th, while the higher reciprocal tariffs go into effect on April 9th. For the DBS News World, Zane Romulus reporting.
We now bring you these international reports.
Training for the next war and preparing for all scenarios. German tank units trained to assault enemy positions, while Czech troops practice decontaminating armoured vehicles of radiation and chemical agents. The commander of the all-European NATO battle group explains why they're here.
Yeah, we are here to, for sure, to conduct deterrence against any kind of adversary, to reinsure the Lithuanian population, and if necessary, for sure, also to defend Lithuania with our Lithuanian partners. And therefore, we need the best material and even more the best soldiers.
The battle group has been made a priority, and the latest weapons, like advanced Puma infantry fighting vehicles, have increased the unit's firepower. Realistic training helps keep the soldiers sharp, and the lessons of the war in Ukraine, like trench clearing, are given particular focus. The NATO battle group is aware its forces are potential frontline troops. The battle group here is training for a variety of scenarios, and in this case, they're training to how to clear trenches from the enemy and force them out and retake the position. The NATO battle group is aware its forces are potential frontline troops. Both the Russian region of Kaliningrad and Belarus border Lithuania, with only a short gap between them. While many Lithuanians are happy NATO is here to protect them, there is a strong feeling that the country needs to do more, and a fast weapons buying program is underway.
What is very important for us is, of course, ammunition and air defense, also drones, and one of the major contracts that we have signed quite recently is to acquire tanks from the German company.
Lithuania is one of 3 frontline Baltic states who all feel threatened by a powerful Russian military, and their confidence in the United States as an ally has been shaken by recent events. A former top Lithuanian diplomat tells me this has now focused minds in his country.
If you're living in Belgium, if you're living in Spain, most probably for you the threats are completely theoretical. So that means they're part of political debate where you would discuss whether you need more social security, more higher pensions, more better roads, or a bit more towards military. For us, the discussion is: will we have our country? Will we retain our country? Will our children have to fight in the war? That is the debate that we're having.
European militaries are very aware that the Baltic countries, with their small populations, are vulnerable to any potential assault by a neighbour, and in the meantime, NATO units in Lithuania repeatedly train for that possibility. Alex Kotopoulos, Al Jazeera, Vukla, Lithuania.
In central Seoul, where thousands of supporters of former President Yoon Suk-yeol are gathering, facing off against the rain and the cold to protest against yesterday's decision by the Constitutional Court to uphold Yoon Suk-yeol's impeachment, immediately removing him from the country's highest office. He is no longer the president of South Korea. Now, people have come together not only to protest the decision, but it seems also to console each other. This is a cause that they felt strongly about. Now they've come together, they're singing and they're dancing. One last time, this group has been protesting in support of Yoon Suk-yeol for weeks ahead of the verdict. This is, of course, not the outcome that they wanted.
The court found Yoon had violated his duties as president by declaring martial law late last year and mobilizing security personnel at constitutional organizations. The court said he had betrayed the trust of the people. Most South Koreans supported Yoon's impeachment and had been protesting against him for weeks. But thousands of his supporters are disappointed and dismayed by the verdict.
We haven't given up on our president. I came here today hoping and praying that our country will be restored to normal.
Because of the impeachment decision, I can't express how many tears I shed. Thinking about it brings me to tears.
Yoon has not yet vacated the presidential residence, but it's expected that he will do so in coming days. There's no chance for him to appeal the verdict by the Constitutional Court. It's the country's highest court, and the decision is final.
Yoon's legal troubles are far from over. He also faces a charge of insurrection. If convicted, he could face life imprisonment or even the death penalty, although that would be unlikely. And without presidential immunity, he could face further criminal charges. Jessica Washington, Al Jazeera, Seoul.
Donald Trump has again extended a deadline for the sale of TikTok. It will allow the video sharing app to remain available in the United States for another 75 days. The platform was hours away from a deadline to be sold by its Chinese owner or face a US ban. Mr. Trump said he did not want to go dark, as he put it. The deadline was initially extended in January. Our North America correspondent explained to me the thinking behind the extension.
Well, the thinking is, he needs extra time to complete this deal, which, according to reports, has been in the works for many weeks, but was actually very close to being consummated by Wednesday. It calls for the U.S. operations of TikTok to be spun off from the main Chinese parent ByteDance, and for ByteDance to retain a minority stake on the order of about 20%. But then came the trade war. The tariffs got in the way, and initially the thinking on Trump's part was that he could use tariffs against China as a cudgel, offering tariff relief in exchange for Beijing's blessing of a deal. That is not quite how things ended up turning out. As we're seeing today, there's now a move on China's part to retaliate against the tariffs imposed by Trump, not to play ball.
So what do we think is going to happen next? Of course, we've got this extension, but is that long enough?
I think, it's a little bit of a wait and see. We have 75 more days. And from the user's perspective, they're very happy to hear that. That's another 2.5 months where they get to continue spending hours upon end in some cases on the app. There's 170 million American users on the app. And I think from the perspective of negotiators within the Trump administration, it gives them extra time, obviously. They say that they were very close to a deal that, in Trump's words, they had made tremendous progress, but that this deal required more work. And really what's at issue here is the fact that Beijing needs to sign off on any deal. If they don't give the blessing to ByteDance to sell the app, there's no sale. But it was interesting hearing from ByteDance today because of the way they're positioning this. They're not talking about a sale or a potential deal. They're talking about a potential solution. And today in a statement, we saw them acknowledging really for the first time that they have been in conversations with the U.S. government, but not using that terminology that a sale is in the work, saying a solution has been under discussion, but that they haven't been able to reach one ultimately.
It is, like you say, a bit of a wait and see. But what if TikTok does, as Donald Trump puts it, go dark in the US?
Well, it did go dark for about 12 hours in mid-January, and it was actually quite interesting watching very devoted TikTok users almost holding a funeral-like kind of set of live streams on the app, just sitting around together on the app, virtually, of course, and mourning, the passage of the app. People are really attached to this. And not only do they enjoy it, but they also say to us that they learn things on the app. They say that in some cases it's actually an important income stream for them. So I think there will be quite a revolt among the users of TikTok if TikTok were to go dark. But Donald Trump said in his statement today on Truth Social, his social media platform, that he doesn't want it to go dark. You might remember in 2020, he was the one who initiated trying to ban TikTok here in the U.S. It got stuck in the courts, and now he thinks TikTok helped him win a lot of young voters here in the U.S. So he's a devotee and says he wants to make sure that it stays online.
U.S. stocks plunged for the second straight day Friday in reaction to President Donald Trump's tariffs, with the Dow losing 5.5% and the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq dropping about 6% each. The Nasdaq is now in a bear market, having fallen more than 20% from its recent peak. The escalating trade war spurred the biggest losses since the pandemic and stoked fears of a global recession. Since late on Wednesday, when Trump boosted tariff barriers to their highest level in more than a century, investors have dumped stocks, fearing both the new U.S. economic reality and also how U.S. trading partners might retaliate by steepening their own trade barriers. Private financial advisor with Ameriprise Financial calls the reaction justified.
We have a market that is throwing a temper tantrum. Frankly, rightfully so, when you think about what the street was expecting in terms of a more tempered approach and a tempered narrative to tariffs and trade in general, and then just what we've seen and how not just how cavalier the numbers seem, but also how cavalier the messaging is. So we have a market that is absolutely selling off on that due to uncertainty, due to distaste for the proposed policy. And that happened yesterday. That carried over in today.
All of the Magnificent Seven technology stocks fell, as did all 11 S&P sectors, with energy the leading laggard for the second straight day, as companies tracked a 7.3% decline in U.S. crude prices. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell spoke publicly for the first time since Trump's tariff announcement. He highlighted that the unexpectedly hefty tariffs could trigger higher inflation and slower growth, setting the stage for challenging decisions for U.S. central bankers. Traders still anticipated a more accommodative Fed policy, with money market futures pricing in cumulative rate cuts of 1 percentage point by the end of 2025, compared with about 3/4 of 1 percentage point a week earlier.
You were listening to the WINN FM 98.9 newscast. Our top stories were: Voices of Sustainability features Dr. Joelle Clark, highlights SID's leadership in climate resilience. Police confirm fatal stabbing of young woman in New Road. Attorney General Garth Wilkin talks pathways to citizenship in St. Kitts and Nevis. Private sector representative in Grenada warns of economic repercussions as global responses continue following Trump tariffs. St. Lucia faces 10% U.S. tariff amid global trade shift. Internationally, future of European defense, Lithuania gears up for frontline fight. Thank you for listening.